Hello, my name is Miriam King, and I am the founder of The Eve Consulting Firm. I'm so excited to co facilitate the 2022 Anti Racism for Educators Conference. Today, I'm presenting from my Champions of Changemakers series the three R's of sustainable activism and advocacy work. The agenda, backstory, and context for today is about ensuring that you don't get burned or burned out by your own flame. Many of you are passionate about your commitment to social justice work and education, but are often depleted emotionally from being in a constant state of defensiveness. My goal here today is to show you how to fill your cup and keep it full so that you can continue to do the work. And because people don't care about how much you know until they know that you care, you have to begin doing this work by taking care of yourself. This presentation is meant to show you how to refuel, reframe, and relate to others in ways that deepen your connection to your work and the communities that you serve. The Eve Consulting Firm's acronym EVE stands for Empowerment via Education. Without a super long bio, I'm simply here to inspire leadership through my personal philosophy and theory of change, which is grounded in identity and purpose. For nearly 20 years of my professional career, my work has been focused on creativity and using the arts as a vehicle for healing the inequities in the systems of education and, most recently, in the workplace culture. At the bottom of this screen, you'll notice that I front loaded the lesson content. Our three R's again consist of refueling, reframing, and relating. But before we drill down into each of these ideas, I'd like to share a few norms to promote our understanding and be anchored by and aligned to our work. Prism It Right, which is also named after my podcast, refers to being open to more than one point of view. Remaining fully engaged is not only a request, but also a privilege. As a participant of this learning community, you have access to information that others do not, and this information is designed to support your professional and personal development. To the next point, own your impact. We ask that you adopt and adapt the best practices or ideas that are useful for mobilizing you in the information that you're using in your work. And finally, one of my favorite norms is to accept and expect non closure. Please let's keep the conversation and work going both on and offline. Jane Elliott, one of my favorite people, is a world renowned anti racism activist and educator. At any moment, she can be found adorning a sweater that elevates this very quote as she sheds light on the issue and impacts of flagrant racism in America. Prejudice is an emotional commitment to ignorance. On the word educator, Jane Elliott has so eloquently said, the word educator comes from the root duck, which means to lead, the prefix e, which means out, the subject ate, which means the act of, and the subject or, which means one who does. Hence, an educator is one who is engaged in the act of leading people out of ignorance. This statement is so powerful because we who call ourselves educators have a specific responsibility to ensure that no one under our tutelage remains in the dark or is left alone in their ignorance. Let's get right into the work. Our first R is about refueling. So let's think about using the tools we teach. How often and even unconsciously do we encourage our students or those who we're called to lead and serve to use their internal tools, tools that we support them to develop, such as grit, balance, imagination, connection, right? How frequently do we use the tools that we're teaching others to have and or develop? Even more, when do you personally take inventory of the tools that are in your toolbox? And how frequently do you sharpen them? This picture caught my attention and I had to share it. I'm just going to say this. If Any one individual showed up at my door to fix anything in my house and they looked like this, I would quickly redirect them back to their vehicle. Because clearly they're not coming to fix anything that belongs to me. I mean, if someone showed up to your house and came this disorganized with tools in hand, what would you say of the quality of their work? What would you think about the integrity of their work? What would you think about the way that they think through process of organization and project planning and design from beginning to end? Even the veracity of what they say they're qualified to do, would you trust it? Right? In the same way, we have a responsibility to think through how we sort through our personal tools. But because for many of us, we are our work, we have a personal responsibility to answer for that. So, in the last year and a half, almost 2 years now, many of us have had to work from home. So, our workspace has literally invaded our home space. And the boundaries or the lines of demarcation between the two have been severely muddled since the pandemic, right? Because we are our work, our expectation is that our home space would often and always look like this in the same way that we want our work to look. Our office desk, we ideally want it to look neat. Many of us, we move differently. Some of us are messy and knows exactly where our organized chaos is and lives. Our responsibility is to reckon with all the parts that make us who we are, both our light and our shadows, and the utilization of our tools, right? So that we can imagine ourselves as better people, not just who do better work, but become better people as a result of the work that we offer to others, both personally and professionally. I've often said to my clients that personal development is professional development and vice versa. So when we can access and activate our tools, this is what can become a part of our norm. Here are a few of my tools, right? And if our spaces were to look aligned, the expectation versus the reality, if this is the expectation, some of my tools look like using a mirror. It symbolizes light and insight. It symbolizes reflection and insight, introspection. A plant for breath, right? Remembering to breathe, which is extremely important to our work. Number three, light and perspective, another point of view. Number four, the appropriate compartmentalization, putting things on the shelf when necessary. Number five, information and context, which is extremely important for our work. Six, creativity and imagination, where the possibilities are endless. Seven, a clock for time. Need I say more? Number eight, rest. Get yourself somewhere and lay down. I'm about to go lay down, go lay down, go lay down. Now, if any of you have been on TikTok and not under a rock, you know exactly what that reference is about. But go lay down, go somewhere and get your feet up and away. How do you decompress? I love to laugh, and it's a great decompressor. What's the thing that gives you rest? And for some of you, you might just really quite literally need actual sleep. Number nine, space. You can't create space for others until you create rest for yourself. And number 10 is joy or a sense of humor. Some of you have fur babies who are just as silly as this. People who you love and know can keep you grounded. And if it's not people, it's activities. It's a thing that makes your heart smile. What do you need to keep you connected to yourself? What do you need that gives you a sense of your own identity and purpose, that reminds you of how amazing and important and powerful you are? What would it mean to you to identify the tools at the top of your toolbox? These may be tools that you teach and use most frequently. These may be tools that you access in your personal work. What are the tools that you find yourself accessing most frequently? And do they need sharpening? Do you need support, right, to develop those tools? So I encourage you to click on the link that you see at the top right hand corner, bit.ly/EVE underscore AFE22, so that you can reference the workbook that is connected to this particular lesson. So, bridging all of these ideas together about refueling and staying full, let's just take a quick look. You are already equipped with everything that you need. Every experience, professionally and personally, has prepared you for what you're doing right now. You are what you offer. How you show up physically is informed by what's going on with you internally. The light and the shadows work is meant for us to take personal inventory of what works and what doesn't, because we are what we offer to anti racism work. Sometimes our external environment tells us that we need a pause, or we need to rest, or we need to take that personal inventory of doing our self work. Consider what tools are underdeveloped and perhaps need sharpening to support your practice. What other individuals, neighbors next to you perhaps have tools that you can borrow? Thinking about borrowing what you don't have, to our final point, is that there is no need for you to reinvent the wheel when someone else is offering you a ride, right? If your colleagues and or friends or family, personally or professionally, are using tools, are thinking about things in ways that are productive and conducive to what supports your elevated practice, why not engage with them to think about how you might adapt what they're doing if it works for you? Some of us are burned out because we are overwhelmed by work and responsibilities within our roles that we literally do not have the capacity for. Others of us are worn out due to the lack of support, professional development, and skill building to gain the institutional knowledge needed to do our jobs well. And there are always those of us who are equipped and do have the capacity to manage all of these moving parts, but are emotionally drained because we're overextending ourselves and don't know how and or where to ask for help or unapologetically take up the space when we need to. If you fit into either of those categories and at any point have felt alone in your work, let's take a moment to shift the perspective to ensure that you can become connected. Think about who speaks your language, right? Our community is found in the very tribes that we keep. What company are you keeping around you that speaks and thinks and feels the way that you do? This is extremely important to AR work because we want to continue to remain relevant and informed by the levels of consciousness beyond our own that identify with the practices that we'd like to keep. Who has your heart? And this person doesn't necessarily have to be close in proximity to you. Distance is a non factor with these kinds of co laborers. Remain connected with them. Do what you can to be intentional to cultivate those relationships. Connection is what you make of it, right? Connections are only as strong as your commitment to invest in the relationship. So let's bridge this second idea about reframing. While loneliness is an emotional response to not feeling supported or not being supported, I want to empower and encourage you to think about the individuals around you that can support you, right? So if we feel at any point overwhelmed because we sense that we are alone, we move like individuals and not as part of a community. That becomes a trap, and it's a danger to the kind of work that we're doing as activists. If you don't see it, build it. Your assessment might be True, you might actually be an individual who's working alone. But if you are not a part of a community and you don't find one that you resonate with, build it. Join or create the community that has your heart and your vibe. Again, distance is a non factor. When someone is out of physical proximity to you, but you know that they connect to the work that you're doing and you to theirs, make an intention, make an effort to build those relationships. Let's just take a few moments to journal our thoughts. I'm going to redirect you back to the workbook so that you can either use the journal on page 6 to reflect some ideas or to review the content that we've already covered so far. Here's a little bit of music to enjoy while you work. We've got about 15 seconds remaining. Let's begin to bring our work to a close for the moment. Hi, my name is Miriam King, and I am the founder of the Eve Consulting Firm. I just wanted to hop in for this quick commercial break to give you a face to match the radio voice personality that you've been listening to for the last few minutes. I hope that the content is helpful, that this information is useful, and that you're able to reflect and share these tools with your colleagues or with anyone that you think might find them beneficial. You would have had an opportunity to get this far in the content and engage with the workbook that is associated to this particular lesson. B, I encourage you to use that workbook and the information therein to strengthen your practice. And if you find it helpful to share with others the takeaways from this lesson, please do not hesitate to refer them to our social media platform, our website, and wherever I may be found online. Speaking of which, B, just hit all the things. Wherever the buttons are, whether they're underneath me or to my left or my right, I do not own these internet webs, and these buttons can change at any time. So subscribe, log in, click, and connect with us, essentially is what we're asking. I can be found on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, all the things that are all the things. Just click all the things that are all the things. And see, on the second to last page of your workbook, there's a link to a survey that gives us feedback on how we're doing. I'd love to hear from you how we're doing. I'm so glad that your being here is also a part of my growth. See how we get to do that thing together? I love it. Well, anyway, let's connect on the other side of this. And as we dive right into these final concepts of the lesson, I look forward to continuing to work with you and serve in whatever capacity that may be helpful to you, your group, and or your organization. See you on the other side. So as we get into our final R, let's think about what building relationships looks like. When we talk about sustainability in AR work, as advocates and activists, community builders, leaders, and classroom teachers, we're not building relationships just to define our network or to be a part of a community, but we're building relationships to think about our succession plan for the near future. There's a saying that just because you can do something doesn't mean that you should. And when you can't, you should empower others around you so that they could. I'll give you that one for free. So I want to take a moment to set up this clip that we're about to see. When we think about making our work sustainable, people should be at the forefront of our conversation, not business capital, not opportunities to get on large platforms or even going viral on social media overnight. People. Here is why. When you can't physically, mentally, or spiritually commit to the work at hand, who's in line to pick up your pieces? Even if it's temporary and you're on vacation, who have you actually developed to do the work when you're not there? Let's take a look, listen, and watch with a critical eye to understand why every generation has to be doing the AR work together and at the same time.
And then we joined with the Urban League in about 1990 on a joint effort to ensure that we were able to strengthen the training and the background and the development, nurturing of many of our leaders or potential leaders in the minority community.
Great. Now, Pat, maybe you can talk a little bit about this. We are looking for these leaders in the community. So what exactly are you looking for? What stands out when considering applicants?
Well, we're actually looking for emerging leaders or those with leadership potential, possibly up-and-comers within a company and so forth. So we hope that employers will help identify candidates who would benefit from learning more about the community. And
now, you said emerging leaders. Is there a specific age, or is it just if you're an emerging leader, it doesn't matter what your age is?
Well, we certainly hope that, and they be supported by their employers, so it certainly has to be someone of employment age. And we're expecting anywhere from 25 to 65, those who have an interest. That's right, across the board.
What do we need to do to make sure that our generations stay together? Because the kids are waiting for us. They need us to be successful. What do we really need to do?
Having the seasoned veterans, since they've experienced it, kind of apply pressure, right? So if they need to come to this leadership conference to get better at what they do, or we had one teammate that wanted to do a little bit more speaking engagements, right? So in order to do the speaking engagements, we might need to do some Toastmasters, right? So I want to force you kind of into that Toastmasters so that you can grow. You can add that tool to your tool chest, because when you grow, you will need that. And I think that's one thing that, seasoned veterans, if we can push, don't just give us the opportunities, kind of push us into that opportunities. Voluntold us to do some things.
I think we all have power and privilege that we can leverage. And so I would encourage and challenge everyone to think about what power do you hold, what privilege do you hold, what space do you hold, and how can you deploy that to someone else? How can you give someone else that opportunity with no strings attached? Really believe in them, create space for them to then launch and do their own thing. And with that, you have to let people be authentic in that. I think sometimes oftentimes we have a very binary box and definition of what does it mean to be a professional, what does it mean to be a leader, and if it doesn't fit into our box or our ideals, then it's not right.
But we have to continue to ask questions so that we can bridge this gap that we've been talking about for far too long. I don't think that we know each other. I think oftentimes we're in this social media world, and so we see people and we think that we know them, but we don't actually take time to have a conversation with them. If we give each other permission to have that conversation, to ask those questions, to be authentic, then we're going to get so much further faster. It's time for us to get real in our community. It's time for us to actually talk about the things that we need to talk about. We have a lot of water cooler conversations, but we have to really start challenging each other and saying, no longer just at the water cooler, but when we come together, we're going to get real. When we come together, we're going to actually have that conversation that needs to be had.
So let's take a minute in reflection of what we just saw to light up the chat with this prompt. Why are age gaps detrimental to anti-racism work? I want you to think about, in 1 or 2 words or sentences, what's the problem? What would be the issue in the gaps, age gaps in anti-racism work? If we're moving between generations and or one generation is more active than the other, how does that impact us? Negatively, positively? Just go ahead and put in responses. Thank you so much for those of you who are engaging in the chat. Let's think about ways that we can sponsor a mentee while being mentored, right? So if we are being mentored, who are we mentoring? And the persons that are mentoring us, do they have mentors? Who are their predecessors? We need to begin thinking about how to connect the dots between each of these segments of individuals who are doing the same work. So I'd like to again redirect you back to the workbook, and you may see there on page 5 that there is a worksheet that encourages you to think through who your connections are. Where are your predecessors? What generation and or tribe are you currently a part of? And even more, who are your successors? Name at least 2 or 3 individuals in each of these groups generationally that can or should be having the conversation at the same time. So finally, let's bridge this last R, thinking about ageism. It's real. Leaders who are matured beyond their prime need either the support to remain relevant or need to be actively engaging with their successors, which would be your generation, right? To be thinking about what the plan of development will be and how do we create that in a sustainable way. But in the same breath, you need to be doing the work to be thinking about the future generations of students or mentees that you are investing time and interest in to sponsor, to support, to encourage, so that when your time has either come and or you may need a temporary respite, you have an opportunity to take a break, entrusting your work into the hands of very capable leaders who you have developed. Let's begin thinking about connecting the dots and thinking about what others can do, right? We maintain these relationships by cultivating them. Chief among developing relationships is that we have a bevy of resources and bandwidth that we would not otherwise access or have. So people are vital to the work that we do. We have to remain in community. I cannot overemphasize this enough. And as we close this session today, I'd like to elevate the takeaways for the journey ahead. Take inventory of your personal tools. These are tools that you often teach with. How frequently do you use them, share them, and sharpen them? Number 2, remember that you are not alone. But if you actually are, you don't have to be. Get into community with others. Number 3, Let's think about these generational divides. It's a very important conversation to have in thinking about how we approach anti racism, activism, and advocacy work. We cannot do this work one generation at a time. We have to be doing this concurrently and working together. Let's think about what it means to bridge those divides. And finally, your capacity to grow begins with the relationships that you intentionally cultivate and nurture. This was my absolute pleasure to spend time with you today, supporting you in your work to strengthen your practice as an anti racism activist, educator, and community leader. Again, my name is Miriam King. I am the founder of the Eve Consulting Firm, and it has been my absolute pleasure to serve and work with you today. All of my socials are here. Connect with me. Let's continue in conversation. And I look forward to your responses in the surveys to provide feedback of today's experience. It has been my absolute pleasure to serve and work with you, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side of this conference. Be well.
I don't know you, but I want to.
Prism it right.
I am the diversity lady, aka the idea specialist, aka the professional shoelacer, aka the safe space maker. I am the latter because I've spent 15 years of my professional career as an educator, as an artist, creating and facilitating safe spaces for people to just be themselves. And the reason why my work is so important in this time in our history is that most organizations don't understand that at the foundation of their identity are people. I'm interested to talk to HR professionals, executive directors, CEOs about an opportunity to work with your organization and to help you to navigate these very difficult conversations around identity, trust, communication, access, and the barriers to entry that might be seated in systemic racism. Hey, hi, hello, prism it right, okay? Prism it right. Prism it right.